I stood there, frozen, as the bouncer's cold eyes scanned the clipboard. My heart pounded against my ribs like it was trying to escape. The elegant charity gala, the most prestigious event of the year, glittered beyond the velvet rope, so close yet impossibly far from where I stood in my second-hand tuxedo. "Name?" he asked again, impatience edging into his voice. "James Collins," I repeated, trying to sound confident despite the knot in my stomach. I'd spent 3 months' savings on this outfit, convinced that my invitation wasn't a mistake. The email had seemed so real, so personal. The bouncer's finger slid down the list, his expression unchanging. "Not here," he said flatly. "Next." "There must be some mistake," I insisted, heat rushing to my face as people in line behind me started to murmur. "I received an invitation. I can show you the email." "Anyone can fake an email," he cut me off. "No name, no entry. Move along." I fumbled with my phone, fingers trembling as I tried to pull up the invitation. This gala meant everything. A chance to network with the city's elite, to finally make connections that could lift me out of the dead-end job where I'd been overlooked for 5 years straight. My boss Marcus was already inside, probably laughing with the executives who never bothered to learn my name despite my ideas saving the company millions. "Sir, you need to step aside," the bouncer insisted, gesturing to the growing line of irritated guests. That's when I heard it, a familiar laugh that made my blood run cold. Marcus stood just inside the entrance with Catherine from HR and several executives, champagne flutes in hand. They'd spotted me, and Marcus wasn't even trying to hide his amusement. "Oh God. James actually showed up," I heard him say. "I told you he'd fall for it." My stomach dropped as realization washed over me. The invitation, it had been a prank, a cruel joke at my expense. I'd been so desperate to belong, so eager to believe I'd finally been recognized, that I'd failed to see what should have been obvious. The invitation never mentioned who sent it. The RSVP link went nowhere. I'd been too excited to question it. "That's James from accounting," Catherine explained to the others. Always trying to get above his station. Marcus sent him a fake invitation as a joke. Their laughter cut through me like glass. 5 years of working tirelessly, of coming in early and staying late, of contributing ideas that Marcus presented as his own. 5 years of being invisible, and now I was a punchline. "Sir, I need you to move along," the bouncer repeated, more firmly this time. Several people in line were openly staring now, some with pity, others with annoyance. Humiliation burned through me as I stepped away from the line, my rented shoes suddenly too tight, my collar choking me. I couldn't bear to look back at Marcus and his cronies, couldn't stand to see the satisfaction on their faces. I walked blindly toward the exit, fighting back the hot sting of tears. 29 years old and still the same awkward outsider I'd been in high school. Still believing that if I just worked hard enough, people would finally see me, accept me, value me. I was almost at the door when a commanding voice cut through the ambient chatter. "Mr. Collins! James Collins!" I turned, confused. A tall, distinguished man in an impeccable suit was striding toward me, his silver hair gleaming under the chandeliers. I recognized him instantly from the business magazines. Edward Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Enterprises, one of the most powerful men in the industry. "Where are you going, Mr. Collins?" he asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "We've been waiting for you." I blinked, certain I'd misheard him. Edward Blackwood, the Edward Blackwood, knew my name? "Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding," I managed to stammer. "My name's not on the guest list. I was just leaving." Blackwood's eyebrows shot up. "Not on the—" He let out a short, incredulous laugh. "That's absurd. Come with me, please." He placed a firm hand on my shoulder, guiding me back toward the entrance. I could feel every eye in the vicinity fixed on us, including Marcus and his group, whose laughter had abruptly died. Catherine's champagne flute hung frozen halfway to her lips. "Franklin," Blackwood addressed the bouncer with easy authority. "This is James Collins. There appears to be an issue with the list." The bouncer straightened immediately. "My apologies, Mr. Blackwood. I'll check again." "Don't bother," Blackwood said dismissively. "Mr. Collins is with me." With that, he led me past the velvet rope and into the glittering ballroom. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing light across marble floors, illuminating the crowd of elegantly dressed guests. A string quartet played softly in the corner, nearly drowned out by the gentle hum of conversation. "Mr. Blackwood," I began hesitantly as we moved through the crowd, "I think you might have me confused with someone else." I'm just an accountant at Weston Financial. He smiled, a knowing glint in his eyes. I know exactly who you are, James. The financial model you developed last year for predictive revenue analysis, the one Weston implemented without crediting you, was brilliant. I've been following your work for some time. My jaw dropped. That model had been my proudest achievement. Months of work that Marcus had presented to the board as his own. I'd never received so much as a thank you, let alone recognition. How did you? I make it my business to know talented people, even when they're hidden in plain sight. He guided me toward a small group of distinguished-looking individuals, and tonight, I'm particularly glad I do. As we approached, the group parted respectfully. Among them was Gloria Chen, the tech innovator whose startup had revolutionized sustainable energy, and Senator Williams, known for his advocacy for economic reform. Everyone, Blackwood announced. This is James Collins, the financial architect I was telling you about. They greeted me warmly, with handshakes and genuine interest that left me dizzied. When Blackwood excused himself momentarily, Gloria leaned closer. Edward speaks very highly of you, she said. He believes your approach to predictive modeling could help scale our renewable energy initiatives across developing markets. Senator Williams nodded. The committee has been looking for fresh perspectives on financial inclusion. Edward thinks you might have some valuable insights. I felt like I'd stepped into an alternate reality. These people, these titans of industry and influence, were speaking to me as if my thoughts mattered, as if I belonged. Across the room, I caught sight of Marcus watching, his face a mask of confusion and dawning discomfort. Catherine whispered something to him, and he shook his head in disbelief. A waiter approached with a tray of champagne. I took a glass, trying to steady my trembling hand. I'm grateful for Mr. Blackwood's confidence, I said carefully. But I'm still not sure why I'm here tonight. Gloria smiled. You haven't been told yet? Well, it's not my place to steal Edward's thunder. I believe the announcements will begin soon. As if on cue, the lights dimmed slightly, and the string quartet fell silent. A spotlight illuminated a small stage at the far end of the ballroom, where a distinguished gentleman in a tuxedo approached the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, the Master of Ceremonies announced. Welcome to the 15th Annual Innovation for Humanity Gala. Before we begin this evening's program, I'd like to invite our host to the stage. The spotlight began to move, searching through the crowd. To my horror, it stopped directly on me. Mr. James Collins, the Master of Ceremonies continued, the visionary behind tonight's initiative and our generous host. James, would you please join us? My glass nearly slipped from my fingers. Host? Me? The room began to spin as hundreds of faces turned in my direction, applauding. Edward Blackwood reappeared at my side, a broad smile on his face. Time to take your rightful place, James, he said quietly. Don't worry. I'll explain everything once you're on stage. The walk to the stage felt eternal. Each step carried me further from the person I'd been just 15 minutes ago. The invisible accountant, the office joke, and towards someone I didn't recognize. Someone important. Applause surrounded me, enveloping me in a sound I'd never associated with myself. I caught glimpses of Marcus's stunned face as I passed, his mouth slightly open, eyes wide with disbelief. The executives who'd never bothered to learn my name were now whispering to each other, desperately trying to piece together who I really was. Edward Blackwood guided me to the steps of the stage, giving my shoulder a reassuring squeeze before I ascended alone. The Master of Ceremonies, a distinguished older gentleman with a carefully groomed mustache, extended his hand with a warm smile. Mr. Collins, he said into the microphone, thank you for making tonight possible. He gestured for me to take the podium. The spotlight was blinding, the silence expectant. Hundreds of influential people waited for me to speak, to explain myself, to claim an identity I didn't understand. I leaned toward the microphone. I think there's been a misunderstanding, I whispered, hoping only the Master of Ceremonies could hear. He chuckled. The sound amplified throughout the ballroom. Always modest, our Mr. Collins. Ladies and gentlemen, you're looking at the anonymous donor who established the Financial Futures Initiative, the largest private endowment for economic opportunity in our city's history. Fresh applause erupted. I gripped the podium, certain I would collapse if I let go. As I'm sure you all know by now, the Master of Ceremonies continued, Mr. Collins has chosen tonight to reveal his identity after 3 years of anonymous philanthropy. The scholarship program has already sent 48 underprivileged students to college, and the microfinance initiative has helped over 200 small businesses in underserved communities. My head spun. This wasn't just a case of mistaken identity. It was complete fiction. I hadn't donated anything. I could barely afford my rent. The master of ceremonies turned to me, expectation written across his face. Perhaps you'd like to say a few words about why you've chosen to come forward now. The microphone loomed before me. The silent crowd waited. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. What could I possibly say? Just then, Edward Blackwood smoothly mounted the steps and joined me at the podium. "If I may," he said, taking over with practiced ease. "James has asked me to speak on his behalf while he collects himself. His humility, as you can see, is genuine." As Blackwood addressed the crowd, he slid a small note card toward me. Written in elegant script were the words, "Play along. Everything will be explained. You are exactly where you need to be." "For those who don't know the full story," Blackwood continued, "James developed a revolutionary financial algorithm 3 years ago, one that predicted market fluctuations with unprecedented accuracy. When offered millions for exclusive rights, he instead chose to make it open source, with one condition. A percentage of all profits generated would fund opportunities for those who might otherwise be overlooked, just as he had been for many years." I stared at Blackwood, trying to make sense of his words. The algorithm he described sounded like an expanded version of the model I'd created at Weston, the one Marcus had taken credit for. Today, that algorithm powers trading systems worldwide and has generated over $30 million for the Financial Futures Initiative, Blackwood continued. But its creator remained anonymous, working his day job, watching others take credit for his innovations, waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. The crowd hung on his every word. I saw genuine admiration in their eyes. Admiration for me, or at least for the person they believed me to be. "Tonight," Blackwood said, his voice dropping dramatically, "marks the launch of Phase 2, establishing the Institute for Financial Innovation, with James Collins as its director. A place where overlooked talent can flourish, where ideas matter more than titles or connections." As Blackwood spoke, realization dawned on me. This wasn't random. This wasn't mistaken identity. Someone had orchestrated this entire scenario, had created a moment where everyone who'd ever dismissed me would be forced to witness my elevation. And whoever had done it knew exactly what had happened at Weston, knew about my algorithm, knew about Marcus. Blackwood turned to me, extending his hand. "Congratulations, James. Your time in the shadows is over." As I shook his hand, cameras flashed throughout the ballroom, immortalizing a moment I still couldn't comprehend. Over Blackwood's shoulder, I saw Marcus pushing his way toward an exit, his face ashen. The next hour passed in a blur of introductions, congratulations, and explanations I couldn't possibly absorb. I shook more hands than I could count, accepted business cards that disappeared into my pocket, and smiled until my face ached. All while a single question pounded in my mind. What the hell is happening? Finally, Blackwood steered me toward a quiet alcove away from the crowd. A security guard discreetly positioned himself nearby, ensuring our privacy. "You must have questions," Blackwood said, his voice low and serious. "About 1 million," I replied, surprising myself with my steady tone. Starting with, "Why are you pretending I'm someone I'm not?" Blackwood's eyes narrowed slightly. "I'm not pretending anything, James. Everything I said on that stage is true, with one small adjustment to the timeline." "What does that mean?" "Your algorithm. The one Marcus Ross stole and presented as his own. It didn't just disappear." He pulled out his phone, opened an app I didn't recognize, and handed it to me. "Look familiar?" My breath caught. On the screen was the core architecture of my financial model, but expanded, refined, evolved far beyond what I'd created. Yet I recognized the underlying structure, the unique approach that had been my signature. "This is mine, but not mine," I whispered. 6 months ago, one of our talent scouts flagged unusual trading patterns at Weston. We traced them back to an algorithm that was clearly derivative of your original work, but Marcus had built in a fatal flaw while trying to modify it. Blackwood took his phone back. "We acquired the IP rights from Weston last month. The company had no idea what they actually had. But the philanthropy, the donations, that wasn't me." "Not yet," Blackwood conceded. "That part is anticipatory. My foundation has indeed set aside those funds for the Financial Futures Initiative, but we needed the right person to lead it." He studied me intently. "We needed the person who created the original algorithm, someone with both the brilliance and the ethical framework to use it properly." I laughed, the sound hollow even to my own ears. "So you created an elaborate fiction about me being some secret philanthropist? In front of hundreds of people? Why not just offer me a job like a normal person?" Blackwood's expression softened slightly. Would you have believed me? A man like me approaching someone like you out of the blue, offering to make you director of a multi-million-dollar initiative? Or would you have assumed it was another cruel prank, like the fake invitation? The question hit home. He was right. I probably would have dismissed any direct approach as too good to be true. And, he continued, there's the matter of Marcus Ross. At the mention of his name, my jaw tightened. What about him? Men like Ross thrive in the shadows. They steal credit, undermine talent, and crush potential that might threaten them. Blackwood's voice hardened. I've seen too many brilliant minds sidelined by such people. Tonight wasn't just about recruiting you, James. It was about ensuring that everyone in your industry knows exactly who you are and what you've created. It was about making it impossible for Marcus Ross to ever claim your work again. For the first time since the nightmare at the entrance, I felt something other than confusion or anxiety, something that burned hot and bright behind my ribs. Vindication. So what happens now? I asked. After tonight? After everyone realizes I'm not actually some secret millionaire philanthropist? But you are. Or rather, you will be. Blackwood smiled. The position, the institute, the foundation funding, all of that is real. The offer is genuine. The only fiction was the timing, making it appear that you'd been behind it all along rather than being appointed tonight. And if I say no, then tomorrow I issue a press release clarifying the misunderstanding, expressing regret that you've declined the position, and life goes on. He shrugged. Though I think Marcus's perception of you has been permanently altered. Regardless. I thought about my tiny apartment, my dead-end job, the years of watching others climb over me to success. Then I thought about the faces in the crowd tonight. Not just the awe and respect, but the genuine interest in my ideas once they believed I was someone worth listening to. What would I have to do? I asked cautiously. What you've always done. Create, innovate, but with resources and recognition this time. The Institute needs a director who understands both the financial and human sides of the equation. He gestured toward the ballroom. These people can open doors, but they need someone who remembers what it's like when those doors are closed. Before I could respond, a commotion erupted near the main entrance. Security guards were restraining Marcus, who was gesturing wildly, his face contorted with anger. "Let me go!" he shouted, his voice carrying across the ballroom. "That's not who he says he is. He's nobody. He works for me." The crowd turned to watch the spectacle, murmurs rippling through the gathering. I felt my face flush with embarrassment, then anger, then something else entirely as I realized what was happening. Marcus was destroying himself more thoroughly than I ever could have. "Should we intervene?" I asked Blackwood quietly. He watched the scene with cool detachment. "I don't think that will be necessary." The security guards were leading Marcus toward the exit, his protests growing more desperate with each step. "Ask him," he shouted, pointing frantically in my direction. "Ask him who he really is. He's just an accountant. He's nothing." The elegant crowd watched in uncomfortable silence, the kind reserved for public meltdowns at prestigious events. Several people near me exchanged knowing glances, the kind that said, "Typical jealous middleman, can't stand to see someone else succeed." "Quite the performance," Blackwood remarked, seemingly unmoved by the spectacle, though not entirely unexpected. "You knew this would happen? Let's just say I've seen this pattern before." He checked his watch. "It's nearly time for the formal dinner. As host, you'll be expected at the main table." My hand caught his arm. "I haven't agreed to anything yet." Blackwood's eyes met mine, surprisingly gentle. "True, but consider this your extended interview. Tonight is an opportunity to see what this world has to offer, and what you might offer it in return." As we moved toward the grand dining hall, I caught sight of Catherine from HR, standing alone by a column, her face pale as she watched Marcus being escorted out. When our eyes met, she quickly looked away, but not before I saw something I'd never expected. Fear. The dining hall took my breath away. 50 round tables draped in cream linen, centerpieces of white orchids and blue hydrangeas, golden chargers at each place setting. A small orchestra played softly from a balcony overhead. At the head table, place cards bore the names of dignitaries, CEOs, and renowned philanthropists. Among them, written in elegant calligraphy, James Collins. "Mr. Collins," a woman's voice called from behind. I turned to find Gloria Chen approaching, accompanied by a slender man in an impeccably tailored suit. "I'd like to introduce you to David Morales, from the Department of Economic Development." Morales extended his hand. "I've been looking forward to meeting you, Mr. Collins. Your micro-lending framework has applications we've been exploring for urban renewal programs. My microlending framework, I repeated, the words foreign on my tongue. The three-tier approach, he clarified. Graduated risk assessment based on community engagement rather than traditional credit metrics. I blinked, recognizing the concept immediately. 3 years ago, I'd drafted a proposal for Weston to invest in underserved communities, using exactly that model. Marcus had dismissed it as naive charity work, without even bringing it to the board. You've seen this framework? I asked cautiously. Gloria smiled. Edward shared it with key partners months ago. Anonymously, of course, respecting your wishes at the time. As they continued talking, pieces began falling into place. Blackwood hadn't just identified my stolen algorithm. He'd somehow accessed other projects I'd developed over the years. Ideas that had never seen the light of day. Proposals buried in Weston's archives or dismissed in meetings. He'd been watching me, studying me. For how long? Dinner progressed with a surreal quality. I found myself engaged in conversations about economic theory, technological innovation, and social impact. Discussions I'd previously only imagined having. To my surprise, I held my own. More than that, people listened when I spoke, considered my perspectives, built upon my ideas. Midway through the main course, I excused myself and slipped away to the restroom. I needed a moment alone, a chance to breathe, to think. In the opulent bathroom, I braced myself against the marble sink and stared at my reflection. The same face looked back at me. Same eyes, same features that had been invisible to the powerful people now hanging on my words. Nothing about me had changed except the context in which I was seen. The door swung open, and a distinguished older man entered. I recognized him as Richard Harrington, the venture capitalist whose firm had funded some of the most transformative startups of the past decade. Collins, he acknowledged with a nod as he washed his hands. Quite an event you've put together. Thank you, I replied automatically. He dried his hands carefully, then turned to face me. I've been in this game a long time, you know. Seen all types come and go. His eyes, sharp and assessing, fixed on mine. The ones who last, who make a real difference, are the ones who remember what it felt like to be on the outside looking in. Is that a warning or advice? I asked. He smiled slightly. Perhaps both. Power changes people, Collins. Tonight you've been handed quite a bit of it. I haven't accepted Blackwood's offer yet. Harrington raised an eyebrow. Haven't you? He adjusted his cufflinks. Platinum, I noticed, with tiny emeralds catching the light. When a man like Edward Blackwood creates an opportunity like this, the offer itself is transformative. Whether you take the position or walk away, you're no longer the same person who couldn't get past the bouncer tonight. His words landed with unexpected weight. He was right. Even if I declined, even if I walked out right now, I couldn't go back to being invisible James Collins from accounting. Too many people had seen me differently now, including myself. Why would Blackwood go to all this trouble? I asked quietly. There must be dozens of qualified people who could run his institute. Harrington studied me for a long moment. Perhaps he sees something of himself in you. He moved toward the door, then paused. You might ask him about his first job at Meridian Capital, before he was Edward Blackwood, CEO. With that cryptic comment, he left. When I returned to the table, Blackwood was deep in conversation with a Supreme Court justice. He glanced up as I took my seat, a question in his eyes. I gave him a small nod. Not acceptance, not yet, but acknowledgement of the game we were playing. As dessert was served, the Master of Ceremonies approached the podium once more. Ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude our meal, our host has prepared a special announcement regarding the future of the Financial Futures Initiative. All eyes turned to me. My moment had arrived. The walk to the podium felt different this time. The crushing anxiety had been replaced by something more complex, a blend of uncertainty and possibility that quickened my steps. The spotlight no longer seemed accusatory but expectant, illuminating not just me, but the path before me. As I took my position behind the microphone, I caught sight of Blackwood watching intently from our table. Beside him sat an empty chair where Catherine had been seated after Marcus's departure, a tactical placement that hadn't escaped my notice. She'd barely touched her food, her discomfort palpable throughout dinner. The room fell silent. Hundreds of influential figures waited for my words. People who could change industries, shape policies, transform lives. 24 hours ago, none of them would have paused their conversations to hear me speak. I took a deep breath. Good evening, I began, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. I stand before you at what appears to be the culmination of a journey, but is actually just the beginning. The words came naturally, as if I'd rehearsed this moment. though nothing could be further from the truth. The Financial Futures Initiative represents more than just capital investment or philanthropy. It embodies a recognition that talent and innovation exist everywhere, not just in exclusive boardrooms or prestigious universities, but in overlooked departments, in rejected proposals, in ideas dismissed as impractical or naive. From the corner of my eye, I saw Catherine shift uncomfortably in her seat. Many of you have asked me tonight why I chose to remain anonymous for so long. The truth is both simpler and more complicated than you might imagine. I paused, weighing my next words carefully. I needed to understand the system from the inside, to experience firsthand how true merit is often obscured by bias, privilege, and the comfortable inertia of the status quo. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Some nodded in understanding, others exchanged glances. What we're launching tonight isn't just an institute or an endowment. It's a challenge to fundamentally rethink how we identify and nurture talent. To recognize that the next breakthrough idea might come from the person who couldn't get past the bouncer tonight. A knowing chuckle spread through the room. They thought I was speaking metaphorically, crafting an elegant narrative for my philanthropy. Only Blackwood and I knew the literal truth of those words. The Institute for Financial Innovation will operate on 3 core principles, I continued, drawing from ideas I'd proposed and seen rejected throughout my career. First, blind assessment of all submissions, removing names, backgrounds, and affiliations to evaluate ideas purely on merit. Second, integrated mentorship that pairs emerging talent with established leaders to bridge knowledge gaps without perpetuating exclusionary networks. And third, distributed ownership that ensures creators maintain stakes in their innovations. As I outlined these principles, concepts I'd championed unsuccessfully for years, I saw genuine interest in the faces before me. The same ideas that Marcus had dismissed as unrealistic were now being received as visionary, simply because they came from someone perceived to have authority. In the coming weeks, we'll announce our first call for proposals, targeting solutions in sustainable finance, community banking, and algorithmic accountability. I looked directly at Blackwood as I added, we're particularly interested in approaches that challenge traditional power structures within the financial system. A slight smile played at the corner of his mouth. He understood my message. I'd like to close with a personal note. I paused, feeling the weight of the moment. Someone very wise once told me that power changes people. That's undeniably true. But I believe what matters most is not how power changes us, but how we choose to use that power to change the systems that confer it so selectively. I looked across the sea of faces, titans of industry, policymakers, kingmakers, and for a fleeting moment, I saw them not as the powerful elite they were, but as what they had once been. Young strivers, some born to privilege, others who had clawed their way in, all of them human, all subject to the same insecurities and aspirations that had driven me. The greatest privilege of my success isn't the recognition or the resources, but the opportunity to hold open doors that were once closed to me. Thank you for your support of this initiative. I look forward to working with many of you to build something truly transformative. The applause was immediate and thunderous. As I stepped away from the podium, I caught sight of Catherine slipping out a side door, unable to bear witnessing any more of my ascent. Blackwood met me at the steps, extending his hand. Exemplary, he said quietly. You've accepted then? I have conditions, I replied. He laughed softly. I expected nothing less. We'll discuss them tomorrow. He gestured toward the crowd, now mingling and buzzing with excitement. Tonight, enjoy what you've earned. As the evening wound down, guests approached to exchange contact information, propose collaborations, offer congratulations. Each interaction reinforced the new reality that had crystallized over the course of the night. A reality in which James Collins mattered. Near midnight, as the crowd thinned, I found myself alone on the terrace overlooking the city lights. The cool night air was a relief after hours of performance. Meridian Capital, I said without turning as I heard footsteps approach. Your first job. Blackwood joined me at the railing. Harrington mentioned it, did he? Always was perceptive. What happened? He was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the distant skyline. I was 24, brilliant but unpolished. No connections, no pedigree, just raw talent and ambition. I developed a trading algorithm that made millions for the firm. His voice took on a harder edge. My supervisor took full credit. The board promoted him to partner, doubled his salary, gave him my team. The parallels were unmistakable. What did you do? At first? Nothing. I was too shocked, too defeated. He turned to face me. Then I got angry. I left Meridian, founded my own firm, and systematically recruited every talented person they had overlooked. 5 years later, we acquired Meridian for pennies on the dollar. Is that what this is about? I asked. Revenge against Weston through me? Not revenge. Correction. Blackwood's expression softened slightly. The system that allowed your ideas to be stolen is the same one that nearly buried mine 30 years ago. It persists because those who break through rarely look back, rarely use their new position to change the mechanisms that excluded them. He extended his hand. I'm offering you the chance I wish someone had offered me, not just to succeed despite the system, but to help rewrite it. As I shook his hand, I understood with perfect clarity what had happened tonight. Blackwood had orchestrated not just my elevation but my education, showing me in the span of a few hours both the arbitrary nature of power and the responsibility that came with it. One last question, I said. The invitation. The fake one that brought me here tonight. Did you send it? Blackwood smiled enigmatically. Sometimes, James. The most important journeys begin with a case of mistaken identity. What matters isn't how we find ourselves at the threshold, but whether we have the courage to step through. As we walked back inside, I caught my reflection in a window. The same face that had been turned away at the door now belonged to the host of the most prestigious gala of the year. Nothing about me had changed, and yet everything had. Tomorrow would bring negotiations, strategy sessions, the complex work of building an institute that might actually change the system. There would be skeptics to convince, allies to cultivate, and no doubt, enemies like Marcus who would try to discredit me. But tonight, for the first time, I understood that my name had always belonged on the list. The only difference was that now, finally, everyone else knew it too.
If this story touched your heart, if you identified with that moment when everyone ignored your worth until someone finally saw your potential, I ask you to help me share this message of hope. Every like is a hug for those who feel invisible today in their jobs, their families, or their social circles. Every comment builds a community where we all feel heard. And every subscription allows me to continue sharing these stories that remind us that everyone, absolutely everyone, deserves to be valued. If you know someone who's going through a difficult time, where they feel that no one recognizes their effort, share this video. It might be exactly what they need to hear today. Remember that great transformations begin with small acts of courage, like Lucia noticing Miguel's talent. Perhaps you can be that person for someone else. See you in the next story. Your support makes each one of them possible. Thank you for being here.